Good evening and welcome to the Grace Talk. I am Gloria Godson. Thank you for joining us. If you are a parent or grandparent, the education of our children is one of the most important topics that you would ever hear or discuss. Why? Because children are our future. And if you are a taxpayer, very few topics are as important as how the state spends your money. And those are the topics that we have for our discussion today. Public education and spending. And my guests today are none other than John Rodell, the chairman of Faith and Freedom Coalition, and Senator Dave Lawson. You are going to be thrilled by what you hear today because you're going to get facts and figures and get information that will arm you to be ready, to be informed and intelligent as you engage the electoral process going forward. Please join me to welcome my guests today. John and Dave, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Happy to be here again. Thank you.
John is very familiar to our audience, so why don't we start with you? John Rodell, again, you're with Faith and Freedom Coalition. You don't need an introduction on our show. But Senator Dave Lawson, welcome to the Grace Talk.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Dave Lawson. I live in western Kent County, and I'm a senator for that district, the 15th Senatorial District. Represent about 46,000 people in that district. It's largely a farming area. As far as personally, I'm number 10 of 11 children, a large family, and most of my life has been in public service. 27 years in law enforcement, a Vietnam combat veteran, and been in the Senate almost 10 years now.
I was truly blown away when I heard of your record. I've known you, and folks, I'm going to say this, I've said this several times privately, but I'm going to say this on camera. When I began to work with Senator Dave Lawson, I really walked away very thankful to God that we have men like him in the place that he occupies in Delaware. I am so thankful that we have men like him holding public office in this state. And at that time, I did not even know his background, the fact that he's been in law enforcement. You've really been a public servant your entire life.
Pretty much.
And what a legacy, and he carries that spirit. And like I said, I already began to know that in working with him and the focus that he has to make our state better. So you have an opportunity today to engage directly with Senator Dave Lawson and ask him questions. Do not be bashful at all. Send in your questions and comments, and I will be sure to ask him those questions, and he can provide the responses that you would need. So Senator Dave Lawson, our discussion today is public education. Delaware is trailing behind all the states, most of the states, in public education.
That it is. First, I'd like to thank you for those kind comments. Yes, Delaware is trailing behind in education because of government intervention. It's not our teachers. It's not our upper staff. It is government intervention that is causing our decline.
And decline it is. You could remember, our audience, we had talked about the Wallet Hub study that came out in July of last year that ranked 182 cities across the nation, and Delaware cities were at the bottom.
There, I believe, about 47.
47th in the state. So now let's talk about the spending. If we're 47th in the state, are we 47th in the spending as well?
No, we're on the opposite end of the scale. We're about fourth in the cost per student that the state and local government puts into education in the state. It ranges between, on the conservative side, about $13,000, almost $14,000 to an excess of $16,000 per student in the state.
Now, I don't know if you just caught that. What the senator just told us is that this state, this small state of Delaware, spends about $13,000, in excess of $13,000 per student, and that in the country we are number 4 in public spending for public schools in the nation, and we are ranked 47th in the results in the actual education product in our children. Why is that such a wide disparity in the amount of money we spend and the outcomes that our children see?
Well, John and I were talking earlier, and he said it early on, and he and his wife's marriage, they had an old car, and they continued to put Band-Aids on it, and finally decided they were buying a new car anyway. So, and I think that's a great analogy here, that we continue to put Band-Aids on the education, and about every 3 years we throw a new testing program at them. So it's gearing back up and getting the teachers in line to do that. And it's just coming down from the top. And as I told you about the teacher that had her class motivated and doing a great job in history, not social studies, history. And what happened was her principal came in to evaluate her and wrote her up for not asking the 3 questions. Not that the kids didn't know the answers, but she didn't specifically ask those 3 questions in a highly motivated class, and with that she quit. We lost a great educator, in my opinion, a very, very energized person and just had kids at heart, and she just had enough.
So what I'm hearing is that this system of education that we have in Delaware is not only working against our children, but our teachers are frustrated because they are not able to teach and educate in the right way. This teacher was teaching the kids and they got it.
They got it.
The children were engaged. They were involved. They knew the answers to the questions. But she was written up because she did not do the rote. Basically, she didn't dumb it down.
That's the short of it, yes.
Gloria, if you know, Delaware still stays with Common Core.
That's correct.
And Common Core is not designed to get kids ready for college or for life. It's designed to get them ready to be a cog in a wheel in the work world. In other words, you follow these instructions, you do this. It ruins their creativity. It takes away history. It takes away facts, and tries to replace it with political dogma. And that's the problem. One of the things that we're missing is you could disagree with the history of our nation if you want to say they did this right or they did this wrong, but you can't change the facts. And so unless we're learning based on the facts, you could never make the appropriate good change. And Delaware's stuck with that old lemon that I used to have that Dave talked about. They keep fixing the windows, keep fixing the dash, keep fixing the transmission on a car on a vehicle or a program like our education system that just doesn't work. It's time for change.
Absolutely. And John, we're going to come back and talk about what needs to change in Delaware. But Senator Lawson, maybe you can drill down a little bit more and give us some more facts and figures around college readiness. Many times kids go to school so that they can be ready to engage the world and be gainfully employed. One of those metrics that measure their readiness is the ability to enter into college and to earn a degree. So can you speak to that issue? When kids leave our public schools, public high schools, are they ready?
They are nowhere near ready. There is one school in the state of Delaware that has an 85% college-ready graduation rate, and that's the charter school of Wilmington. That's a U.S. News report. And it goes from there down to 19%. That means they're not college-ready, they're not career-ready, they are not ready, they're not educated, period.
So they're not ready. Kids, 19%.
19% of the graduating classes are not ready for college. When 80-some% of our students, when they go to enter college, have to go to remedial classes before they can become freshmen.
Wow.
This
is sobering.
Sad.
This is
sad.
Sobering. It's so sad. I'm shocked and I pause so that our audience can that this can sink in. That when children graduate from public schools in Delaware, when they graduate high school, they have to take remedial classes to be able to get into college. They are not college ready. 19%.
That's the lowest. But the one school at 85, the very next school was 68%. What a drop. It wasn't anywhere near. So that's a large falling off in short order. And all with roughly the same number of students.
Absolutely. Let's check in with our audience. We do have a couple of questions and comments, and then we'll continue. We'll go back to what is the solution, because something needs obviously to be done. We have a question. He says, are there any plans, either current or future, to implement personal finances as a mandatory curriculum in the state's public education system? If not, will you help advocate for such legislation?
No, there is not. I can tell you, our kids can't change a tire, they can't balance a checkbook, and they cannot make change. I was just in a store this morning, and the young person behind the counter was probably pushing 20 and could not make change. So no.
Wow.
Will I pursue education or pursue that type of? It's not legislation. It's just getting the mindset of government to get out of the way so teachers can do their job, and they'll do it. I mean, they're so creative and so involved, and they so want to take those little student balls of clay and make them into something. We don't have to do anything. Legislation, no. We need to stay out of the way so that these teachers, the innovation, the people who form our future can do the job that they want to do.
When you say that the state needs to stay out of the way, the government needs to stay out of the way, what do you mean? How can we get them out of the way so that the teachers can do their jobs?
Well, government has done a bait and switch. State government here pays about 70% of the school costs. 70%. The local pays about 30%. That adds over $498 million to the budget, to the schools. That's that local share, roughly. And that doesn't help us any, because the state now has control. If they have the money, they have control. And so they can put down the mandates and the edicts as to what those schools will do and what tests they'll do. And about every 3 years, we change tests. That seems to be at 3 to 5. And that throws everybody into a tailspin. And the teachers end up having to teach to the test so they don't lose their jobs and get a bad evaluation over it. The thing is, the tail is wagging the dog here. And the tail, unfortunately, is state government, in my opinion.
All right, obviously, if you're listening to us today, the good thing is it's state government. And the bad thing is the state government. But the good part of that is that you and I can vote. We can vote. We do have a voice in who is our state government. That's why we're having this conversation today, so that you are informed and you are ready to engage with the government and ask the right questions. If you're listening to us and you are a parent or grandparent, we're giving you the ammunition to know the right questions to ask about your children and your grandchildren. Of any person asking for your vote in November, you have a question to ask them regarding education and how we can get the government out of the way. John, what do you have to say about this? Is just, for me, it's appalling.
You know, I was never a good student. To be honest with you, I was not. I grew up in an orphanage school, and I was just hostile from the day one, and I was never a good student. But I had good teachers. And back then, like Dave said, they didn't teach you social studies, they actually taught you history. And so what they did at those schools, where each teacher wrote their own course curriculum for that semester. You know, they had to cover certain areas, but they did it in a very effective way. What we have now is that a common core standard comes down from on high from the federal government down to the state, and then the state government issues what the teachers have to teach and how they teach. Dave's right. They have to teach to the test because that's their measuring stick for if they're doing good or bad as a teacher. I find that most teachers hate Common Core. They know that it's just Sandra Stosky, who is on the Common Core Credentials Committee, says the English standards are nothing but empty skill sets. The head of Stanford Mathematics, who was on the credentials for the Common Core Mathematics, says he resigned because he said every single child that goes through K through 12 in mathematics and Common Core will need to take remedial courses to ever get into college or to ever understand mathematics. and they found out that people that do good in mathematics always do good in college. So what we're teaching them is not preparing them for anything. So the first thing I think personally that we have to do is we have to get Common Core and throw it out the window like Florida did. The Florida governor said, this is enough. We're canning it. We're going back to the teachers. We're going back to the regular history books and curriculum books that taught English, math, science, and history, and did it in a correct and proper way. And when they do that now, the kids are enjoying school more, and that's the trouble. That's why we're losing jobs in Delaware. Nobody wants to come here to start companies because the education system's so bad. What do they do with their kids? And if they do come here, they move to Pennsylvania to live because the schools are better. So how do we fix it? Listen to people like Dave Lawson and Bryant Richardson, Senator Bryant Richardson, that really have a good grasp on getting out of the way. And that's what we have to do.
If you're just joining us, we are here in the studio with Senator Dave Lawson and John Riddell of Faith and Freedom Coalition, Delaware. And our topic today is public education and spending. And we've heard some very disturbing facts that Delaware spends about $13,000 per child in Delaware. And the outcomes that we have from that spending per child, we are the 47th in the country for the performance of our children based on that spending. And by the way, we're number 4 in spending. Number 4 in spending and 47th in outcomes. And this is obviously very troubling. And the reason we're sharing that with you today is because if you're a parent or grandparent, nothing is as important as the education of your children. And we want you to be informed. And the issue is not the teachers. But John and Senator Lawson have said very clearly that we have excellent teachers, teachers who are committed to the children, who want to teach the children. But the standards and the measurements of the teachers and what they have to do and the curriculum is a problem. And government is in the way because government gives the money and so government has the controls and they pull the strings. And what we're looking at today is how can you and I, as citizens of this state, raise our voice to be heard with our legislators and with the government to say enough is enough. We want our teachers to have a voice, and we want our parents to have a voice, and we want our children to have outcomes that match, at a minimum, the amount of money we're spending on their education. Now, John, I'm going to go to a comment that we had because I think it ties in with what you just said. Jason O'Neill just made a comment. He said, hi, Jason. In addition to education empowerment scholarship accounts, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just eliminated Common Core in Florida for the 2020-2021 academic school year. Do you think it's time that we eliminate Common Core in Delaware?
Without question. It's you could start tomorrow with no idea what to do and get rid of Common Core, and the kids would be better off. One of the things that's paramount to a child. Look, children are very wise. When they have these soccer games and baseball games where they don't keep score because they don't want anybody to feel bad. Well, I got news for you. The kids know what the score is.
They sure do.
They're not dummies. They understand who's winning and losing.
And they know what the score is on this too, don't they?
That's right. And so they know when they're being led down the primrose lane. They can tell that. I mean, kids know the truth. And so not only do we have to get rid of Common Core, we have to get rid of the Common Core books. We have to get rid of the Common Core testing. Right now we have Smarter Balanced Assessment testing. And if you ever want to change a society or a culture or a nation or overthrow that nation, there's 2 things you have to do. You have to take control of the churches. You have to take control of the schools. And look what's happening in our country overall. People of faith are being ridiculed because they believe in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, because they put their faith forward first. And the kids in schools are being indoctrinated away from the founding principles of our founding of our nation. Our founding fathers understood and experienced tyranny. They knew what tyranny was all about. That's why they designed the system today, and that's why they want to, in order to undo. John Adams said, our system of government was designed for a righteous and moral people. It's unfit for any other. So if you want to take care of destroying our country, all you have to do is get rid of those 2 elements: good education and religious freedom. And that's what's happening in our country. The empowerment scholarship accounts are important because of this. Many of our Christian schools are closing. Many of these small independent schools are closing that have been very effective, very good, very strong. If you have an impact, because The families can't afford to pay the separate tuition for that and to pay the taxes for the public school system. So if you have an empowerment scholarship account, what happens is that child can then go to the school that best fits their need. I'm not saying that every school has to start teaching about religion, but what about the students that want to take religion, their families are religious, they want to go to a religious school? They should have the right to do that. What if a kid wants to go to a special school that teaches special things, like their emphasis is on science or on history? Kids can do that. What if their emphasis is on trade school, where the kids don't want to go to college, but they want to learn a good craft? So this would give those parents that opportunity to send their kids to the right school. And in the end, it makes all schools better because schools will start competing for that student.
I have to totally agree with that, because it is about competition. It's been that way from as far back as I can remember, because if your school was better, not only in sports, and that was the outward competition, but scholastically, that was a pride that carried out throughout the community when the school did well. Today, you don't see that. Yeah, we have pride in our school because the football team wins, not because they won scholastically.
Yes.
And I think that's an emphasis that has been lost. But I would like to say just one thing, if I can back up a moment. That $13,000 is just the state portion of what
Not
PFAS.
not the
That's
local
not the total.
portion.
That does not include the local portion too.
Wow.
You're right at 16,000 when you include the local portion. Remember, that 13,000 is only
It's
70%
70%.
of the total bill.
Dave, tell me what the total education bill is in Delaware.
$1.7 billion.
For a small state like Delaware,
3-county state.
$1.7 billion, almost $2 billion in
And
education.
And if you counted all the state grants or the federal monies that roll in here, it's over $2 billion.
Wow. And for all that spending, we're getting 19% of college readiness.
Well, in all fairness, the average between 85 and 19. But
Well, I mean, the fact is there are some schools in Delaware that are 19%. There are
absolutely.
the top, and you mentioned that
Many below 20, or
Many
below 30. Rather.
below 30, and the top performing school is 85% college readiness. One school, and then it drops down to 60.
68% is the very next one.
Is the
And
very
50
next one.
and then below 50.
I mean, again, the reason we want you to have all the facts, I keep going to the 19% because I'm just shocked that any school, that after a child has gone through how many years of school, grade school and high school, that they will end up at 19% is just shocking to me. It's absolutely shocking to me.
This is what happens when they have to teach to the test and not to life. It's that simple. When teachers teach for life skills, our students do so much better, not only in school, but when they go beyond school. When it is taught simply to the test, there is no foundation, there is no base, and there's nothing to go forward on.
We have another question here from our audience, from Tim. Hi, Tim. Tim says, how much of the $16,000 is allocated to making sure that kids are getting not only the education, but also the proper nutrition and diet they need to perform at their best?
That is one thing about the schools, that they do have breakfast, lunch, and even weekend backpacks that they send home for the students. So nutrition is there. Now, whether it's consumed or not on the weekends, who knows? But it is there. The programs are nutritionally rich. They get them.
They provide food for the children.
They really do.
Thank you for all those questions, and again, thank you for our audience. The questions coming we want to answer and respond to your questions. Well, let's go back, Senator Lawson and John, to begin to talk about what do we do. John has mentioned that we need to get rid of Common Core. Another thing that, again, we've heard repeatedly is that the teachers are as frustrated as well. Teachers are close. Many good teachers. My mom was a teacher.
And as was mine, and my daughter.
Yeah, There you go. My mother was a teacher. One of the biggest impressions I had growing up is everywhere I went with my mom, people would stop her. And these were her it's students in
Sure.
grade school, and they've now gone up to be important people in the community. And these, many of them have all kinds of education, lawyers, doctors, and they will stop her and talk to her about what an impact she had on them in grade school. I would never forget, there was hardly any place I went with my mom that she wasn't stopped by a former student who would just congratulate her and remind her, do you remember me? I was so and so, this is what you did.
And that's the impact that we're
Yes.
missing today. They remember the teachers, but they don't remember the education and what it did for them because they were unable to give them that education. And again, please don't anyone think that I'm down on our teachers or for that matter, Secretary Bunting. They're great people and they're doing a tremendous job within the parameters of which they're allowed to work. Not what they can do, but what they're allowed to do. And that's a mistake.
So we need to, again, Common Core out of the way is one thing that we need to get out of the way. Now, what is another thing that we can do? How can we empower the teachers and the parents to get involved and to have the kind of outcomes that we want for our children?
In my opinion, I think that the parents have given up and kind of turned the child over. Not all of them, but it's very hard to swim against that stream. And the biggest thing that parents can do is, number one, vote, and vote with knowledge, and ask the hard questions. If you've got candidates out there asking for your vote, make sure that you ask them the hard questions. What's the purpose of government? What are you going to do about education? And what do you plan on doing as far as spending is concerned? And if they don't have answers to those, they do not deserve your consideration. It's that simple. I'm not talking party, I'm talking about people who are willing to work for you and your children.
Absolutely. You're hearing what we call the vote kingdom, where if you're a Christian listening to us, it's not about your political affiliation, it's not about your pocketbook, it's not about your race. It's voting your conscience and voting your values. Ask questions, and I will be even more direct. Are you willing to eliminate Common Core? Let's get to the root of the matter.
But you have to get rid of the politicians who are keeping it in there. Common Core came here with a $19 million carrot. That's how we got it.
Is the money.
Sure.
You know, there's one common denominator. When Jimmy Carter put in place the Department of Education at the federal level, there was one thing that happened simultaneous with that. As the U.S. Department of Education got more authority, more power, and more control over education because they had to control the dollars, the illiteracy rate climbed dramatically. Because what they were teaching was, they took away the old teaching methods and have new age information and new age teachings. It just does not work.
But you said illiterate, not literate.
That's right,
Okay.
illiterate. The illiteracy rate climbed dramatically.
It did.
And because of that, because when you have politicians in control of what's going to be done in the school system, you get a political result.
Yeah.
Not a result for the child, an education for the child, you get a political result. Dave Lawson and Senator Bryant Richardson are the exception. They are what our founders saw, and they didn't have politicians, they had statesmen.
Yes.
That's what they had, and stateswomen. They do not have those today. And today it's all about politics, and like you said, vote kingdom is vote principle, not party or personality. And that's what we have to do. We have to start getting back to the principles. We know that they have, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but they still have cut scores in the education program, where if a school's not performing, and it doesn't even say what level, just proficient or non-proficient, well then they can change the scores to say, okay, this school's doing so badly, let's make proficient 30%. I'm making the number up, I don't know what the number is. So what happens is, you have these schools that are 85%, the one school 85%, their proficiency's up here. Well, the other school is down here. So they're all performing proficient, that's what they say. But guess what? These kids are being way shortchanged. So that's what we have to do, get the politics out of it. Block grant the money to the school without any kind of conditions other than to go for the education system. The other thing is we have to start looking at the administration part of it. For instance, the Brandywine School District has 72 administrators for just the Brandywine School District. What do they do?
19 school districts.
One school district. And they're paid close to $8 million for their 72 administrators.
Now, so people can understand what we're talking about.
What did he say?
Yes. Let's break this down, because when you talk about this, it's sometimes people are like, really? This is 72 administrators. Who are administrators?
Don't know. Can't
They're
tell you.
not teachers.
They're not
No,
teachers.
they're not teachers.
They're not in the classroom. They're not. No, you need some administrators.
They're all
but do you
mid-level,
need- yeah.
at mid-level.
Do you need 72 telling the teachers what to do? No, the teachers already know what to do.
Why don't we give this money to the teachers who are actually doing the job and remove this 72 administrators? That's top heavy.
That's
That
just
is
one
so
school
top
district.
heavy.
That's just the Brandywine School District. So
That's
here's a
19
question.
school districts.
Gloria,
No, that's one school district, and every one of them has an administrative umbrella that is just hurting our children.
Wow.
But, I'm going to go back to the voting thing and how to look at candidates. There's two things a politician should never have: suspenders and thumbs to put under them. And unfortunately, most you'll find, guess what?
They do
Multiple
have that.
pairs of suspenders. And that is a problem, because it's about moi, it's not about service. And that is, yes, they start out right, but somewhere along the way, contamination gets them. And they get pulled into the, oh, you have to go here, you have to do this, and you have to, that's not what it's about. And I'm number 10 of 11 children, and a big family. And if it wasn't truthful, you didn't say it. If it wasn't honest, you didn't do it. And if it wasn't considerate, you didn't behave that way. And it's just that simple. And you try to do your best. And do you make mistakes? Sure you do. But that's life. And that's why he forgives us.
Yes, it does.
These things, you just got to look inward. And what is going to serve your community the best? It's not about a close-knit community. It's about your community, your school. How's it going to serve you? And we can go a long way in short order by just looking internally and making sure that those folks around us are doing right by us, or fire them. It is that simple. But it takes we the people to get off the couch to make the change.
That's right. That's right. And listen, this is your call to action today. This is your call to action. It's not enough for us to sit down in our comfortable chairs at home and complain. It's not enough for us to sit down and whine and complain. You now have an opportunity to do something about it. What we've given you is facts and figures that are verifiable and that are true. And what we've given you is information that you need to make an informed choice. Very soon people are going to ask for your vote. Ask the right questions. If you care about the future of your children, if you care about the future of this nation, ask the right questions and make up in your mind that you are going to vote the person who has the right program and the right mindset for the future of our children. What you've heard is that Common Core is very destructive in the way that it engages with our children in the classroom. It is not giving them the opportunity to achieve their fullest potential, and it's limiting the teachers in what they can do. Common Core is a problem. Florida has got rid of it. Why shouldn't Delaware get rid of it? And you and I can partner as voters to ask those questions and to require our elected representatives and our government to address this important issue for our children. This is your call to action. Begin now to get ready as we begin to get towards the election cycle to ask these questions and to require answers that are not double speak. Answers from elected officers that are real and that are genuine and that are responsive to the questions that you ask. John and Dave, we are coming to the end of our show today, and as you can see, I am really concerned about what we've heard because all this is factual. And I happen to have a child who is a school-age child, and many people who are listening to us today have kids and grandkids. Even if you don't have any, these are the people who are supposed to be working to pay your Social Security in the future. You should be concerned. You should care whether you have kids or not, because the workforce of today will pay the Social Security for when we get older. We need to be concerned that they are ready to engage the workforce, that they are ready to be productive citizens for their own sake and also for the future of our nation. So what, gentlemen, as we come to the end of our show today, what are your deliverables for our audience? What would you tell our audience to? You can look at the camera and give a direction to our audience. What should they do? How should they respond to this question, this issue? And how can they engage going forward?
Well, the first thing you should do is I think you should go to your child's school and ask to sit in on the classes and have parents in the classroom seeing exactly what's happening and what the kids are being taught. I think you ought to talk to your children. My grandsons, all under the ages of 15, and my granddaughters constantly school me. You know, we were reading a book about dinosaurs, and it said, "Pa, sound it out. You're not getting the names right." They're very smart. Your kid will tell you whether or not they enjoy school or whether they enjoy the class, and don't think they're just going to say, "Oh no, I hate school." They know what's being taught, and they know what's best for them. So talk to your children about this. Go to the schools. Contact your legislators and say, "We're tired of this. Our children must come first." That's the government's job, to protect and serve. Not to indoctrinate, but to protect and serve. And so there are two things I would start to do right away, because you have to follow the money trail. And that's what they're worried about. They're worried about if you have empowerment scholarship accounts, well, then money will leave the public schools. Well, if you're going to spend $8 million on administrators for one school, you should be into another school. If you're going to force Common Core down your child's throat, you should be in another school. These teachers are ready, public school teachers are ready to do the job. They know what to do. Free them. Put the responsibility back into the classroom. The testing back in the classroom. What the teacher teaches back in the classroom. Because those children, a teacher can see, under Common Core, the teacher can't stop. For the children, they're a little bit slow. She can't slow down the process. She has to be, she or he has to be at a certain spot at a certain time during the school year. If you put it back into their hands, they can do that. They can look at it and look, I need to spend more time with this child. I need to do more on this. I need to slow down the curriculum. I need to speed it up because they've got it and they're ready to go to the next thing. Put the responsibility back in the classroom, and I think we'll have a great result in our education.
Local control, absolutely local control. And I would like to say to all you parents out there, you want your child to have the best education possible, because as my children remind me, they get to pick my home. And I certainly want them to do that educated, And so keep that in mind. You want them to know what they're doing when they make that choice. Thank you.
There you have it. Your children will pick your home. And you want them to be able to make change when they do that.
Exactly.
And pay attention to the school board elections.
Yes, that's another good point. You want your children to be able to read, what the home is about, right? And to make the right choice.
I would appreciate that.
We have come to the end of our show today, and I am telling you what you've heard is, again, I know that some of it is shocking, but this is factual, and you needed to have those facts so that you can take action like we've told you. If you are a public school teacher out there, we salute you. We applaud you because you guys are doing a phenomenal job, and we want to, again, what you've heard from the Senator and from John is a lot of applause for our teachers who are ready to teach our children, who are engaged, who are active, who want to do the best for their children. What we want to do is to take the limits off of you so that you can do what needs to be done. Pay attention to the child that needs paying attention to, and work with the kids who are getting it, and move at the speed of your children. Do what is best for your children in the classroom. Another thing you heard today is local control. The major issue that you've heard, is the thread throughout this conversation today, is that because the money comes from Washington and comes from the state, they pull the strings. We need to get this money without the strings. That's what we need to do. We need to be able to get leaders who allow the teachers to have control in the classroom. And parents, get engaged. That was John's challenge to you. Don't sit by or don't give up. Get re-engaged. Go to your child's school. Be involved, because these are your children. They do not belong to the government. They are your children and your responsibility. So thank you so much for watching us today. Let's check back and see if we have any. We have folks telling us they are watching. Thank you so much. And thank you for your questions. Continue to send those questions, and we'll make sure that the senator sees them, and John Riddell as well. Thank you so much for watching our show today. Our children are the future. And whatever you do, make a commitment. Make a commitment to do something about what you've heard today. That this will not just be one more show, but that you would take this armed and be dangerous as you go towards the election cycle, to ask the right questions, to ask your elected representatives to actually represent you and your children, and to do the right thing. And I couldn't tell you how proud I am of Senator Dave Lawson, as not just only being a senator, but a statesman. And I've worked with him outside of the public view and outside of the camera. And what you see is truly what you get. A statesman, a man committed to the leadership of our state and to the best outcomes for our children. Thank you so much, Senator, for being on our show today. Thank you, John Riddell. John wasn't feeling too well today, but he came as well. Thank you. And thank you for watching us today. Good night, and God bless you.
God bless you.